feel as though I have power.
Now there's nothing to stop.
I feel I can do anything.
Okay, I have seen that. I've seen that probably 100 times, and if I'm not tearing up, I'm getting the chills, and this time was no exception. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce the truly inspirational filmmaker, philanthropist, and my dear friend, Ramaa Mosley.
Wow. Good morning, powerful people. Good morning. You are all here today because you are powerful. When I was little and I would hear the term power breakfast or power lunch, I would fantasize and try to imagine what that looked like. And looking out on this amazing group, well, now I know. The question I ask myself all the time is, how can I be used in service to something that is bigger than myself? How can I be better? How can I do better? That is true power, and that is the power that is in this room, how we can make a difference. It is an honor to be here. It is great to be here among kindred spirits and friends. The Women in Philanthropy Fund, in partnership with United Way, is a passionate advocate for the betterment of women and families in Orange County and is doing stunning work. I'm honored to be here with you. I was so blown away when I was asked to speak because it is truly remarkable what you're doing, and it's also remarkable because I came from a very similar background to the children and families that you are helping. My mother, my whole childhood, has said, life is possibility. You have a great purpose to achieve, and you can be anything you want. When I was a child, we were poor. But my mom always made sure that we had a context for this. We were poor, but we weren't really, really poor. I understood that there was others who were far worse off. My mother had 3 of us by the time she was 27, and was a single parent for most of our lives. She was getting help from welfare and food stamps, and we couldn't afford extras like colorful, sugary cereals, which I fantasized about constantly. On holidays, we didn't have a bunch of presents under the tree. We just, really couldn't afford this. And I remember one particular Christmas when she called us together and said we weren't going to be having any presents. My mom said that we just couldn't afford it that year, and instead we were going to work at the homeless shelter that day. Now my mind started working on this, and I went through the stages of loss very quickly, and then I immediately started to try to construct the story that I was going to tell my friends when we went back to school, because of course they were going to be describing their new toys, and how was I going to frame this situation? How was I going to avoid them? Would I lie about what I had not received? That day, my mom took my 2 brothers and I to the homeless shelter, and we worked in the line to hand out jackets and presents and food to families living on the street. And let me tell you that I didn't complain about not getting a Christmas present because I saw people who didn't have homes or cars. I didn't feel poor at that moment. Later that night, there was a knock on the door, and a family friend brought over a basket with a present for each of us and some food. Someone cared about us. And I was so happy because my brothers opened up their presents, and each of them had gotten a Transformer robot. And that was really great. And I think at least one of them still has that Transformer robot. I had my story to tell at school. Yeah, Susan and Gina, well, I had so much that I went out and I gave to others today. What did you do? These were transformative experiences which taught powerful lessons. And I learned at an early age that even I was privileged that it felt good to help others. It felt good to do good for others. We were poor, but we could contribute what we had. In addition to making sure I had empathy and appreciated what I had, my mom taught me that I should listen to my intuition, follow my inner voice. If I could envision it, I could create it. I could do anything, I could be anyone. She couldn't pay our rent most months, and she could barely feed us, but she sat there and looked in my eyes and she said, "Rama, life is possibility. You can do anything you set your mind to." So, at 8 years old, I listened to my inner voice and I figured it out. I knew what I wanted to be. I went to her and I said, "Mom, what I really want to be is Pope." The boss of everybody and everything. And that was what, in my 8-year-old head, was what I needed to be. So instead of telling me that I would never, ever be Pope, because we were part-time Jewish, and I was a girl, my mom said, "Okay, start practicing." So I did. I wrote speeches and I blessed people. I would randomly go up to strangers and put my hands on them because I thought I could heal them. Like in supermarkets, I would follow people. And I created little marriages. I would get 7-year-old Satya and 8-year-old Mia from down the street and make a wedding and design the flower bouquet and then force them to stand in front of me. And I would go through the whole ceremony and pronounce them married, whether they liked it or not. I really loved to tell people what to do. Eventually, the weddings turned into elaborate plays that I wrote. And soon, I was no longer leader of the New World. I was a director. I was directing the kids in my neighborhood and creating these artistic avant-garde plays, stories that I forced my friends and the neighbors to act out in performances. And that was it. I never looked back. I knew what I wanted to be at a very young age. I watched television reverently, watched movies, studied as many movies as I could. I had a dream to be a film director. I was growing up in a small town, though, with no money and no connections. I knew no one in the film industry or the advertising world. How was I going to make my dream happen? At the age of 13, I was walking down the street, and I saw a film crew shooting, and I snuck onto the set, literally, and I started looking around, and I found the director. And I knew he was the director because he was the one everyone was going to with questions, and he was bossing people around. And he let me stay for the day, and then a few more, and eventually I spent over 2 years studying with him, and he became my mentor. When I was 15 years old, I took a class on the environment and became very alarmed with issues of pollution and climate change. And when we would talk about these issues in class, half of the students would say, "There's nothing we can do," and half of the class would say, "We can do something." And being my mother's daughter, you can imagine which side I was on. I came up with this idea to make a documentary, even though I had never made one, about the environmental problems and how teens like us felt about them. Our goal was to send it to the UN in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm really not sure why we thought we should go there, but like my early goal to be a pope, it seemed like the very, very top. The film we made was very subtly titled, "We Can Make a Difference." We finished it, then sat around and thought about what to do. We decided that we wanted to send it to the UN, but then why just send it when we could hand deliver it? So we had multiple fundraisers and garage sales, and we raised enough money to fly to Geneva, Switzerland. On a bright, cold morning, we showed up at the gates of the UN. And you can imagine the look on the guard's face as we stood there, these teens, with our VHS the tape in our hands. And the guard made a few phone calls, and instead of sending us away, he opened up the doors and let us in. We sat there with a group of scientists who screened our film, and we talked about our concerns for the environment. And they took us seriously. They made us delegates for the UN, and we went on to win an award for the United Nations Environmental Program, and we traveled to Mexico City to receive it. And sitting in that theater, watching our documentary with hundreds of people, I knew exactly what path my life would take. I wanted to create work that inspired and motivated people through the medium of video. This launched a really exciting time from my teens and into my young adulthood. I went on vision quests, literally. I sat in sweat lodges with my brother, and I sat with Native American people, and I read Howard Zinn's People's History. I wrote screenplay about civil rights and equality, and I immersed myself in film and advocacy work. I went to college, and I made 2 more documentaries about plights of people around the world. One about Jamaican farm workers who come to the US to pick apples and cut sugarcane, and one about the Aymara Indians who live in the Altiplanos of Bolivia. Then I graduated college, and I was discovered by Los Angeles and New York production companies who saw my photographs and my footage and my potential. And within months, I was directing music videos and commercials. And I remember sitting across from film producers who looked at me and said, "You are going to be a superstar." And still, I stayed grounded, and I focused on my true purpose. And that said, going from documentaries to making commercials with dozens of people and best tools was exciting. I was very inspired by action and storytelling, and I became good at shooting sports, which is unusual for female directors. And I directed commercials for brands, like Monica said, Adidas and Powerade. Most people, before meeting me, though, thought, based on my work and my name, that I was a man. And then I would show up, and they would see this 20-year-old girl, and more than once I was asked to get them coffee before they realized I was the director. That was over 18 years ago. Since starting, I've directed hundreds of commercials and numerous documentaries, and now 2 feature films. I've traveled the world, and I've stayed at fancy hotels, and I've worked with fancy people, and I can buy any colored sugar cereal I want, though I don't. After all this time, what I really think about and feel passionately about are the lessons that my mother taught me when I was a child, caring about others and storytelling. 3 years ago, I was invited to work on a film called Girl Rising, which followed the lives of 8 girls struggling to get an education in different parts of the world. I was given the opportunity to direct the Afghanistan segment about a young girl that was married at 12. Being part of this tremendous film changed my life. I am dedicated to helping girls around the world because despite the important gains we have made, this film serves as a powerful, powerful reminder that far too many children, and especially far too many girls, are still unable to go to school. Even here in Orange County, so many children do not get the quality education they need because of poverty, and this must change. Unlocking the opportunity of education and empowerment for all can have a very transformative impact for our community and the whole world. The studies have shown unequivocally that when we educate girls around the world, they are more likely to go on to educate their families, have children later in life, and educate their own children and break the cycle of poverty. In April of 2013, I heard a 10-second radio story about 276 Nigerian schoolgirls who were kidnapped from their beds at their boarding schools in the middle of the night by the terrorist group Boko Haram. I was devastated. I searched the internet for news, but there was very little to none. The mainstream press had not picked up the story. Only a few and small mighty group in Nigeria were tweeting about it and marching and demanding that their government do something. They were the founders of Bring Back Our Girls. I could think of nothing else but the schoolgirls, and I couldn't sleep. And I worked to try to find a fixer and fly to Nigeria to help the parents search. My then 11-year-old daughter, hearing my plot, begged me not to go because of the danger. She said through tears, "Can't you just go do something from here? Can't you shoot a commercial?" At first, that did sound ridiculously simplistic. The governments of the world needed to act now, and I needed to go there now. But I knew that she was right. So that very hour, I wrote 30 friends, and I told them about the kidnapping. Only 2 wrote back, and they said, there's nothing we can do. This is Africa. Well, this made me very mad. That night, 2 years ago, was the night before the WPF breakfast, and my mother, who, by the way, is no longer poor and has achieved her dreams, and I were here at this very hotel. I was tremendously inspired by the work that WPF was doing, and I felt empowered. So I went on Twitter, and I started tweeting to every person I could think of and asking them to help. I wrote Oprah, who was a great inspiration to me, Beyonce, the president, Michelle Obama. I used the hashtag that I saw the Nigerian advocates using, Bring Back Our Girls. I went on Facebook, and I created a Facebook page. The team at Girl Rising helped me create a graphic for the movement, and I posted it everywhere I could on social media. I was sitting at this very breakfast the next morning, and I was literally then sending out thousands of messages to each of my friends. I mean, I was listening, but I was sending out these messages. And I asked my friends to join and to change their profile pics and to march on social media to raise awareness. A few hundred people that day joined, then a few thousand, and within a week, there were over 200,000 people on the Facebook page. And people were starting to pay attention. And I was coordinating awareness events around the world. Hundreds of people were writing in daily asking for our help to set up marches and rallies in their cities. And the Facebook page became a central platform for people to connect and get information. On day 7 at 3 a.m., I received a call from the BBC in the UK. It was a journalist who had heard about my efforts to raise awareness about the Nigerian girls. And they asked me if they could interview me. I went on air at 5 a.m. and I did my first live interview ever, which was very daunting. And when I finished, my phone started ringing, and I received a call from CNN and then NBC, ABC, CBS, all asking me to come to their studios. I went and I spent days talking to reporters, and the news finally hit the mainstream media. The story was everywhere, and Michelle Obama took a picture of herself holding up the Bring Back Our Girls sign, and she tweeted it. And my very outspoken public participation with the media and the movement culminated with an interview with Katie Couric. So that was really quite something. What did this teach me, though? When you see injustice, you stand up. When you see another person in need, you stand up. Together, we must change the world, because oppression can only exist in the dark, where people are too afraid or unable to speak up. What a moment like that taught me is that there is power in one voice, because one voice can speak out to the world via social media and become a million voices. And as we socialize this message together that the Nigerian schoolgirls matter to the world, repression becomes more and more difficult, and then eventually it becomes impossible. Education of girls around the world and protection of girls is the key to our future. And of course, young men as well. You know, my daughter stood by me at every one of those marches and many of the interviews with press. And like what I learned from my own mother, she learned very meaningful lessons and was empowered. She's now 13 years old and started a gender equality group at her middle school and leads marches of her own. And my 11-year-old son is learning the lessons of giving back as well and doing meaningful work. This November, he represented the United States at the Children's Climate Change Conference in Sweden. Recently, my mother and I founded Food for School, which helps families in rural, impoverished villages in Afghanistan send both their boys and girls to school. And this is a very personal and grassroots effort to make a difference. And when we think about all the world's problems and all the problems that we face here in the United States, it can feel insurmountable. But each of us can do one thing to take action, to change the problems. We started with $600, and we have prevented 7 child marriages, and this is just the beginning. I envision that Food for School will grow and be part of my family's legacy, as we have 72 children in school at this moment. Since you know me fairly well now, you probably know that I believe in possibility and legacy. I believe that each of us has a potential to make a difference in the world. We each have a purpose. And I hope that you will act in whichever way that you can, because we all recognize that it doesn't always take millions of people to do one thing to affect change and to make a difference. It takes each and every one of us doing some small thing in our lives, in our environment, that can affect the change and make a better and positive story for another person. What I have done is what you can do, because true philanthropy comes from living in the heart of yourself and giving what you have been given. How will you do that? How will you use your personality to serve your soul's calling? I task you to fulfill the fullest, highest, truest potential of yourself. Use your privilege. Use your life to elevate the life of others. Any life, no matter how fantastic or how much attention you get, how much money you have, is enhanced by sharing and giving to others. This is a power breakfast, but the real empowerment comes when every person in this room makes a decision. And I hope that the decision was to write a check today, and if you didn't yet, you still can, to help this amazing organization. Maybe that decision is to donate your time. The true question is, how will you support yourself and therefore others? How will you use everything that you have been given to serve that which is greater than you? How will you use that to become authentically empowered? Because this is when you will truly make a difference. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my honor. Thank you. Thank you so much.